a few people. Once we publish the official episode, we'll probably get 30,000 listens within a month or so. So right now we'll have probably no watchers, but which is fine. Takes the pressure off.
Yeah, that's
and
totally fine.
And I forgot the name of the group. You're with the Gold? No,
the Gold Group.
Gold Group, right? Yeah, Gold Group. Okay, cool.
You're not actually. I run it. Did I need to have stats? Because I don't.
No.
Okay.
No. Nope. All right, here we go. I just got to push it live on Instagram. Okay, we're good.
Wow, we're on Instagram Live.
We're on Instagram Live. Yep. Which is the reason why I'm filming in this format, because this software, unfortunately, it doesn't record it in landscape and horizontal or portrait landscape. Yeah. So you can only do one or the other. And so it's much easier for us to edit this than edit from vertical.
The landscape.
Yeah. Landscape.
Yeah.
I should just say landscape. And
yeah, right.
Vertical and horizontal can be confusing to me. All right, here we go. All right. Okay. We do have a few people watching. Nice. All right. Let's see. Okay, and eventually I'll put a proper intro and all that to it, but for now we'll just jump in. All right. Today on the show, our guest is Kelly Dugan from the Gold Group with At Properties Christie's International here in Chicago. Let me tell you more about Kelly. Now, Kelly is a proud member of the top producing team, the Gold Group, and she goes above and beyond to ensure her clients have a seamless and stress-free experience. In her free time, she enjoys working out and trying new baking recipes. I'll have to talk to Kelly about this because my mom just gave me my first, I feel so embarrassed to say it at 47, my mom gave me something. She just gave me my first sourdough culture. So I am now in the process of learning how to do all that.
I'm a hardcore sourdough lover, and I make
we'll
twice a week.
We'll swap. I'm still learning how to feed it and what it all means. And anyway, but back to Kelly. We'll talk baking later. But whether you're buying, selling, or investing in real estate, or if you need baking advice, you can trust Kelly to guide you through the process with ease and experience. She truly believes that your success is her success, and she's committed to making your real estate journey a success story. You'll be very happy you selected Kelly as your realtor, as she will go above and beyond to get the job done and done right, while always providing the best customer service along the way. Now, please, she has her own podcast. I want you all to listen and subscribe. It is called Realtor Talk with Steph and Kel. You can find it anywhere podcasts are served. And Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
I cannot believe that you are starting the sourdough life, because I have a plethora of information for you on that.
Yeah. Well, I'd like my first one. I think my first one's going to be a regular sourdough loaf, and then I want to try a sourdough dark rye next. So those are, and I just bought a Dutch oven because I know you're supposed to have a Dutch oven. So
that's right.
So anyway, okay, but back to you.
Back to real estate.
Yeah. So tell us more about you. So how did you get into real estate?
So right out of high school, I started working. My first job ever was at a hair salon in Frankfurt, Jeffrey Lamort Salon, which was like the best first job ever. And I started there when I was 16, and I went to beauty school, and I kind of got to a point probably around like 25, 26, to where I just kind of felt like I needed something new. I kind of feel like I stopped growing and evolving in that sense. And I originally wanted to get into real estate for investing purposes.
Sure.
To see where my career is now, I would have never in a million years then guessed that it would be where it is now. In a good way, obviously, because my family, I don't have anybody who was in real estate. I don't have, an uncle or anything like that who had this real estate business. So it was very foreign to me. And so I was going to real estate school. I was working my old job, and I told very select of my hair clients at the time that I was going to be, because I didn't really know what was ahead of it. I was crossing each bridge little by little. And one of my clients, who I was cutting his hair, his wife, Stephanie Campbell, he's like, wow, she's trying to build a team out here. So I met with Stephanie for coffee, and it kind of is the rest is history. And looking back, I'm like, I just am so blessed to fall into her lap. I like to say it because once I got into the business, I realized how much risk new agents are for signing with the wrong brokerage.
Sure.
Or, committing to a team. I honestly had no idea about any of it. And I just kind of went with my gut and trusted Stephanie. And I couldn't be more thankful because we don't operate that way, thank God. And like our team, I don't even like to say a team, it's truly a group. We just help each other. It's not like all those nightmare team stories that you hear and everything like that. So I kind of just, Stephanie took me under her wing and the rest is history. Like now I'm a, producing like a full-time agent. This is all I do. And it's craziness, buyers, sellers, some investing here and there, like I originally wanted to do. But I'm definitely in the thick of it of being a full-time agent now. And I couldn't be more, grateful for how it all happened.
And how many years now have you been in?
This is my 5th year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you are now coming out of the hardest part, which usually is those first 3 years, and things are probably starting to just work a little bit more smoothly. Is that kind of what's happening?
Yes, it's more chaotic as the years go because you get more business. I actually was just saying that this morning. It's like I think I just have to get used to always feeling like I have a to-do list that'll never be fully fulfilled. It'll be my to-do list that's fulfilled for the things that need to get done, and there'll always be scragglers down there. So yeah, so I think that it was very, very hard in the beginning. And I have a lot of credit too. I was still working part-time at my old job to help. And then of course the help of my fiance, like being able to take that leap and go full time was huge. And that was really the game changer for my business.
Yeah. I that is amazing. I was thinking too about you being you were a stylist before. That was, yeah.
Yes.
So it's what's funny here in Illinois, at least, and I don't know if this is the same across the country, but the number of hours that a stylist has to put in before they can actually start practicing is something like 12 or 1300 hours, right? Isn't it?
Yeah. It's, I don't even know the full amount, but it took me a while because I started it in high school. So I had to go half day high school, half day beauty school. So it took me like all in all about a year and a half to complete. And then I had to do like, a year internship at the salon too. So there was a lot to it. And I loved doing hair. Like I said, I just stopped growing. And I will say, you wouldn't guess it, but the people skills and the communication skills and the talking skills that I took with me from doing hair all those years and having that alone time and one-on-one FaceTime with a client has helped me tremendously in my real estate career. So I credit so much to that. I'm so thankful that I did that for all those years.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just getting my hair cut recently, and somebody is in the process of going from being the person who washes hair to a full time stylist, and
Yeah.
he's been on that path for years. And he was telling me about the 1300 hours or whatever it is, and I said, the irony of this is, a haircut. I think my haircut's like $65, whatever it is, and somebody has to do 13 hour or 1300 hours of training for that. Yet to get a real estate license in Illinois, you only need to do 75 hours, and that's incredible because that's not a $65 haircut. That could be a $650,000 home,
Yeah.
right,
Oh,
or more.
100%. And
So
that's one
it's
of my
it's
biggest things is like, gosh, I do wish it was just a little harder to get licensed.
Yeah. Yep. I think, and I think right now with the changes that we're seeing from the NAR settlement, I think we're going to start seeing some agents who maybe, aren't all that in the business.
Yeah,
As we were talking before we went on, I think we're going to see some people exiting the business. In fact, we're already seeing that. And so I think the good agents really have nothing to worry about because there's just going to be more market share for them to gobble up. Um,
I agree.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you prospect. Because right now, there's a lot of things we can't control. Obviously, inventory, interest rates, those are well beyond our control. And as much as we can try to, persuade our clients that now is a good time to buy, in a sense, because of course, when rates drop, everyone's going to flood the market with buyers, and of course, those prices are all going to jump up. But a lot of people just don't want to make any changes right now because they don't like that interest rate or they don't like the inventory that's out there. So there's a lot you can't control at the moment, but of course, there's a lot that you can control with your activities and your actions. So I would love to know, what are you doing right now to stay busy, stay productive, just keep the business growing?
So I really do focus on my clients in front of me. That is a big thing. And of course, it's natural that, during the busier seasons, you're going to have the clients in front of you. And then in the more quiet times, you're going to have that time to maybe like, call 50 people or do any of that thing. So when it comes to like prospecting, my thing always, I love to snowball off my listings. I have one listing, guess what? I am targeting that entire neighborhood. I'm going to send like we get brochures made for the listings, and usually with it selling in a day or two, I have 20 left over. So what I'll do is I'll look through that whole neighborhood and I'll see who's owned the longest and who's probably most likely to sell. And I will send that brochure and say, hey, I just sold your neighbor's house. This is an example of the marketing that I use, and kind of a little story as to selling their house. And it, just to make it more authentic and not just like a, hey, I'm trying to buy your house and that kind of thing. So I think snowballing off of your listings, that's always like a really big one for me. And when it comes to buyers, I have my buyers all set up on Zedlist, which I'm sure that you're aware of that platform. And it's
Sure.
great. It's just like this like inner portal that connects you with your clients. And we have like a little chat in there and sending properties back and forth. And when it comes to buyers, facing those types of problems in the sense of like, okay, the interest rates are so high, or oh, prices are so high, because they are. And
Yep.
and it's one of
Because
those things, like you said, there's so many things you can't change. And I think getting them to see that helps a lot. And it's all comes down to your motivation. I mean, I tell my clients all the time, like, yeah, I know that you guys love that 2.5% interest rate, but you have your third kid on the way. Are you going to put an addition on your townhouse, or are you going to bust out of the seams and be uncomfortable just to save that 2.5% interest rate? Whatever way you want to do it is fine. It's your life. But I think it's just like delivering them with the hard facts and saying you're always going to deal with I always feel like you're always going to deal with the brunt of a market. If you're going to be a seller in this market, you're going to sell high and you're going to be so happy. Well, when you put your buyer's shoes on, you're going to be so mad. So
right.
which one do you want? Because you're not, unless you're buying in two totally different markets, you're likely not going to get both. So I tell my clients right now, you're buying with higher interest rates and higher prices. So me personally, I'm seeing things still go really fast, but I'm not seeing the 20, 30,000 over asking like I was when rates were two and a quarter.
Right.
So I just think right now it's one of those things you have to be serious and motivated, and you have to focus on what you can't change. Location, like layout, just those types of things. And this isn't the market to get hung up on an ugly cabinet color. Those kinds of things, and just really narrowing down what's important to them. And a lot of times I'm like, look, if you can squeeze out another year in that busted through the seams town home with that 2.5, see what happens. But if rates drop next year, it will be competitive, because then we're at the inventory issue. So it's just like this vicious circle, and people think that like it's going to be the best time to buy now, whereas like no one can time the market. It's all situational, and to what you are looking for and what your lifestyle is.
I think, yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, we're talking about feelings, like customer feelings, and how
Oh,
feelings really ultimately, most of the time, trump logic, right? So
so many
even
feelings,
though,
DJ
yeah, it's
Paris,
like,
so
you
many.
yeah, and it's just human nature that we're really driven by our feelings, kind of drive the bus more so than logic in certain situations. And buying a home being such a large price point for most families, most individuals, a lot of times the largest financial decision. I know when I bought my most recent condo, it was the largest financial decision I'd ever made.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I was telling Kelly before we started, I said, "Oh, I just bought a new car," and we were talking about it. And what I didn't mention that I think would be helpful to our audience is one thing that the salesperson, who was very good, said to me is when we were in the process of negotiating, which is always the worst part. Now, some people like that. I don't like it because it's just whatever. It just
Yeah.
seems like a big, cat and mouse game. But anyway, eventually we arrived at, something that was reasonable. And she said something very smart to me. And this particular person is like the number one salesperson. They have 15 different dealerships. She's like the person. I just got
Wow.
lucky and got her. And she said, here's the thing. You're going to walk out of here. And she's lovely. I really like her. She's like a good human being. I like her. I'd hang out with her. I'd be her friend. But in that moment, we're sort of not adversaries, but we're certainly competing with each other to
Yeah.
try to get I'm trying to get the lowest price. She wants the highest price. And she's like, look, no matter what number we end up deciding on, you're going to walk out of here and you're probably going to feel like you got ripped off. She goes, that's totally normal. It happens to everybody. She said, if you feel that way and you wake up the next day and you feel that way, I want you to call me because I'll talk you through it. But I want to make sure that you're at least comfortable with this number right now, because I know later it's going to come back to you and you're going to feel like, and I thought, boy, that was so smart, because as I was leaving, that's exactly what happened. I'm like, I really liked her. And then I went, wait a minute, did I just get ripped off? No, I didn't. But I didn't. But she was wise to say that. And I think agents would do well to think about hey, I know it can feel like now is not a good time. And here's why. Here's people who are making decisions now. Here's why they're making it. And here's how it's going. And but I think this idea of really explaining sort of here's the, I mean, because even in a great market, even in a time when they do get the price they want, at some point they're going to freak out, on the buy side at least. At some point they're going to have a moment, whether they share it with you or not, and maybe just internalize it. But they're going to
Yeah.
have a moment where they're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Right? Unless they're just a seasoned buyer and it's no big deal. For most of us, it's a big, big deal. So I love this idea of sort of coaching somebody through those feelings, and feels like that's a big thing for you too.
Oh gosh, I think educating and coaching, those are like probably the two main hubs of my business because I just think that it does make for such a smoother transaction and it makes for repetitive business and referrals. And I really lean heavily on my sphere and my friends and family. And I think if you treat your clients, if you give them the best service, they're going to do a lot of the marketing for you, truly. And I think that, again, like I say, I snowball off my listings, I snowball off my clients. Like of course I want new clients, sure. But if I could get referrals to where I had a little bit of a connection, that's a little bit more of a solidified relationship and process for me. I would choose that all day long. So yeah, I think educating and coaching and the feelings part, absolutely. I tell people all the time, I'm like, you're not gonna wake up one day and be like, today is a great day to drop 500 grand on a
Right.
house.
It's never a good day to do that.
No. And also too, when you say, when people are like, okay, well, like when I walk into the house, I'll just know it's the one. And I'm like, I don't think even I think there's always going to be a little bit of that devil on your shoulder reminding you of this is the biggest purchase that you've made in your life so far. So again, it is normal for nerves and everything, but you just have to. I always like to say, as a buyer's agent, I'm like the best friend that knows every single bit of the process. That's your right hand man. I mean, truly, because it's like if we talked 6 months ago and I knew everything that you were looking for and I knew the price point and everything, and then 6 months later we're there and you have that feeling, I'm like, look, this has been the goal. This is here. I mean, obviously, again, like it's going to be a lifestyle change, but again, we're not going 100 grand more than what you had originally said a couple of months ago. Like this is what you've been wanting. This is where we're here. We're here, and I think that you have the feeling of, okay, I don't want anyone else to have this house. I think that's more of a realistic way to put it versus walking in and being like, this is the one.
Ah, that's interesting. I don't want anyone else to have this home. That's a really interesting phrase. I really very much like that. So I
Yeah.
think that's a great tip for our listeners to consider, saying to them, as you're going through and evaluating these homes, you might have an aha moment where you walk in and you're like, this is it. That happens once in a while, but I wouldn't count on that experience happening, because there's, like you said, there's always a little bit of doubt that's going to come in. It's normal, it's human, it's totally, it's actually to protect you in case you're doing something
Yeah.
totally reckless. So it's good to have that little second voice saying, well, we should maybe think about this. But then, maybe you can reinforce which way you want to go by saying, would I be okay with somebody else having this home? I love that. And if the answer is yes, then we move on.
Right. And it's also too the same thing in the sense of when you're in multiple offers and they're offering, let's say 550 and they're like, oh, should we go to 560? I'm like, you need to offer it at a price that you're okay with losing it at. So if you do 550 and someone wants to come in and pay 560 at your mindset should be let them,
Yeah.
like that's what you want to offer it that you're okay with losing it at. So it's I feel like this job is it is very psychology based. It's very how you educate your clients again, because if they have an agent who's not really giving them much assurance and they're kind of wishy-washy or anything like that, doubt is just going to like you're going to be up all night and probably have cold buyer's feet because you don't have that assurance because you're a brand new first time home buyer and you have no idea what you're getting into because you're not really getting that from your agent.
I'd like to go back to this. That's a really great point. I want to go back to the snowball sort of situation that you have, and specifically around when you sell a home that you look, for neighbors who are
Yeah.
nearby who are probably familiar with this property and say, hey, by the way, I just sold, and you send them a brochure and a letter. Have you ever thought? And again, I don't know if people do this anymore, but have you ever thought about going door to door, being like, hey, just FYI, I sold so and so's home, just wanted to say hi? Or to me, I don't know how easy that would be for me to do. I'm just asking because I know there are people that do that, but just curious if that's ever something you've tried.
You know what? I haven't. I would not be opposed though, because I am much more of an in-person person than like, it's more part of like my well-oiled machine in the sense of, okay, I have a listing and I always do the brochures, but that's only like maybe like 15 or 20 of them. And then I'll do also like, a mile radius of postcards that have a QR code that will, basically give them an estimated value of their property. And then I find out who scans those codes and then I will call and follow up. I do love the idea of going in person. Truthfully, I think at that point it would probably be a time thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just usually always do the mail. And I mean, there is a little bit of an intimidating factor when it comes to door knocking. I don't, it's the worst too. If like me and Stephanie had to do this food drive. So I was helping her. We were, going door to door, and all we were doing was leaving bags on people's doors, not even ringing doorbells. And the amount of times that I've jumped because the dog just like out of nowhere, just because I was walking up to the house, I'm like, okay, I don't know if I like door knocking that
Yeah.
much.
The best way I've heard for people to do door knocking, because again, and also too, there's a safety consideration and just, sort of, do people like getting their doorbell ring? I don't know.
Right.
But one way that I've seen it work is if there's an open house. So prior to the transaction closing, going around saying, hey, just FYI, we're doing an open house at your neighbor's this Sunday. If you feel free to swing by, that kind of thing. Didn't mean to bug you. Just want to let you know you'll probably see me here on Sunday. If you want to swing on by it, everybody wants to see their inside of their neighbor's homes, right? So
Right. No, that's a great idea. And that is something that I'll do if I'm doing an open house. I will, or one of my favorite things to do actually, if it's a smaller neighborhood, before we list, because neighbors love to know the scoop, they love to know the in. So I will write a letter to the neighbors that says, like, just to give you the courtesy, I appreciate the quaintness of this neighborhood. And if you see some unusual traffic, it's because I'm listing your neighbor's house. And that gets them. And then I'm like, if you know of anybody, if you have any friends or family who want to be your neighbor, let me know. And I'll get
ooh,
calls like that. And they're like,
that
oh, and even if they don't have anyone, they're going to call me because they're interested in what's going on at their neighbor's house. So that's a really good one I like to use if we have that time, like just say that we're prepping for photos or whatever it is. I always do that too.
that's an amazing idea. So I'll tell you, I live in a condo building in the city. I should know how many units there are. I don't know. I think, let's say 40. I think there's 40 condos in our building. And we've had a few people. It's only 3.5 years old. Actually, it was listed by Carrie McCormick, who's an ad properties person.
Yes.
Right, your company. Anyway, and so a couple of these properties have sold since the original owners. I'm still an original owner, and I have received exactly zero postcards, emails, texts. Now, again, texts and
Oh,
emails people won't get, mailers, anything saying what you just said. Hey, just in case you didn't know, one of your neighbors is in the process of selling. If you'd like to have one of somebody be your neighbor, I mean, think about how simple. Like, they could have literally just walked through our building and slipped it under, put it on our door, a little postcard. It wouldn't cost
yes.
anything, and I would love for somebody I know to be my neighbor. So this idea
Right.
of what you just said is such a great idea. So for
Because
those
you
of
make
you,
it sound like you're doing them a favor. Not doing them a favor, but like you're letting them in on the scoop.
exactly, because the only time, I mean, I don't monitor my building, so I don't know when people are buying and selling. The only time I know is when I see the delivery truck pull up. I'm like, I guess someone's moving out and moving in.
Right.
And in a condo building, especially a smaller one, you do develop relationships with neighbors, not all of them, but some of them. And so it is kind of a bummer when somebody leaves, because, and so this idea of knowing that is really, I'm sort of shocked. And I don't think it's because everybody knows that I'm in real estate. I don't think that's the reason I'm not getting the postcards. I think it's just nobody's doing it. And
Well,
it's
and also we're in a digital world. Sometimes I'm like, it's hard to mail the thing anymore, but I feel like it is because I think that so much gets lost in email.
we have 800 agents at our company, and when we email them something we need from them, almost nobody pays attention to it. When we SMS them, when we send them a text, that's when they pay attention. And again, I know you can't really text strangers, without their permission, but yes, emails get lost and forgotten about.
Yes.
I'm sure your company at Properties has the same problem when they email all the agents saying, please do this, do that, and like nobody notices it.
Yeah.
So this is, yeah, so that's a great point. So in person, face to face, voice to voice, those are going to be what win the game, at least that I've seen. Let's talk a little bit more about marketing. So you're in your 5th year. When did it start? How many years in before the referrals started really flowing? Just to give our audience, who maybe they're newer to the business than you. When did it really start to click?
So I got licensed in 2019, and so I feel like that honestly. Well, so obviously, I always say I had a very good combination of luck and timing and hard work, obviously, because 2019, I went into this completely zero experience, nothing. And I experienced the 2020 crazy COVID market. So it's like I started in like the craziest market, like running around like chicken with my head cut off. So 2020, I did decently good for being a new agent. It's not like I killed it, but it was just, the market was insane. And then 2021, I would say probably like my third year is when I was like, okay, I feel more like it's a well-oiled machine versus me just constantly like waiting for where the next deal is going to come from. Whereas now, and I would say probably like my third year in is when I felt like, okay, I think I could make this work just doing this if I just continue to grow every year as I have. And just know that one of my favorite things about real estate is that it truly ages like fine wine. Like you get better with years and you get better with experience, like you yourself and your brain and everything, also your reputation and also your experience. Like that is something I wish I would have known more as a new agent, is like it's like a fine wine. It gets better in time. Whereas like my last job was something that in time, like you kind of, if you're an older hairstylist and you're not really up with the trends, you're not, it's just different in every aspect. Like, and that's one thing I love about real estate is that A, the sky is the limit, and B, if you do it correctly and your reputation is good and you're a great agent, it only just gets better year after year after year.
So I have a question. So if you were to think back about your earlier self in real estate, when you first started, you didn't know what you know now, you were probably, there's anxiety around how am I going to pay the bills and build this into a business? And, gosh, I don't have enough clients at the moment. And all of those sort of uncertainty feelings that happen to every single person who starts this business. What would you tell yourself, to knowing what you know now? What would you tell your younger self to make those first 2 or 3 years, which were maybe not super comfortable? What might you say that would make it more comfortable?
Honestly, and it sounds so cliche and obvious, but you get what you put in. And that's all I can say. And sometimes that might take a year or 2 years or 3 years. But like if you truly, truly are dedicated and you put in the work, it will work out just with time. And if that's not working out, then your leadership around you. I credit so much of where I am to Stephanie and having a good mentor from the start and a great brokerage from the start. I credit so much to that. So if you are in those beginning phases and you just feel like nothing's working, look around you, because you are who you surround yourself with. And you need a mentor and you need somebody, because you could do your hours over and over and over again in school, but you really, in my opinion, don't learn anything until you are in the business.
Yeah, mentorship is I can't think of anything more important for a
Oh,
newer agent.
huge.
Yeah, let's talk about your team, because there's lots of different teams and lots of different structures, and some people have good experiences with teams and others feel maybe this isn't the right team for me. How did what advice would you have for somebody who is thinking about joining a team, but isn't quite totally sure if they should do it?
I would say make sure that you just really learn as much as you can about that team before signing anything, I guess. Like even get to know the agents on that team. Go on their socials. I think you can know
Mm.
somebody to an extent on their social medias. You could at least get to know them somehow, some way. And I mean, of course, agents are going to want to look at like a split. Like my team doesn't work like that. That's why we call it a group. It's not like because Kaylin Goldstein and Stephanie Campbell are the team leads. So it's not like Kaylin and Stephanie are getting my production and I'm not. Like I have 100% of my production, and it's not. It's just such a black and white group of people who help other people, and that's really all it is. And I think that there's some people out there who have had a bad taste in their mouth from teams and think ones like ours, who we just help each other, don't exist. We like the camaraderie and we like the gold group, and it's just fun. We all get together with our meetings and we share marketing ideas, just like how you and I are doing, and it helps build that momentum. And it's nice because I have someone somewhere like literally everywhere. If I have a city client where I don't really do too much in the city, like hey, that goes, and I have someone northern western suburbs. So I love having everyone everywhere because if a client comes to me and it's not exactly an area that I work, I can still help them. And I still brought value to them by being like, hey, here's my team member Duval or Frankie or anything like that. But I think it's very important if you're not on a team, have a mentor. Be picky on that. That's my biggest piece of advice is be picky and make sure that the agent cares and wants to help. Like, I don't know, don't go based on the leads either. My theory on that is everyone is going, if anyone gives you leads, they're not good ones. It's always been it's always been my saying. But our team, like we don't, and we're honest about that, or I should say Stephanie and Caleb from the start. We don't try and get people on our team and be like, we'll give you leads, because it's not like that. We always joke like BYOC, bring your own clients.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's mentorship should ultimately generate leads, meaning the mentorship experience and the knowledge and the wisdom that you learn from these mentors should be the gateway for you to apply those principles and those practices. And that's what really is to me the biggest benefit of joining a team is getting the wisdom. And once you have the wisdom, like you just point yourself in that same direction and apply the wisdom, and the leads will eventually show up. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but within a year for sure. And yeah. So, here's a question. So when you're in the middle of working with lots of different clients at the same time, which I'm sure you always are, how do you continually think about, I still need to be prospecting, even though I'm slammed with business? Because this is a problem that agents often run into is they get bottlenecked, meaning they have a bunch of clients that happen. It's kind of like with online dating too, for those single people. What happens if you're doing online dating, you put all these requests and I like this person, this person, this person, and then you hear nothing from any of those people. And then all of a sudden, like 3 or 4 of those people reply at the same time. And you're like, oh boy, now I have to talk to all these people. And
Yeah.
it becomes a little bit like, oh geez. And then some of those people fall away. And of course, and the same sort of thing happens in real estate where you do all this marketing and then eventually you get some things that happen at once. But then if you don't continually market, then eventually when those transactions either fall away or close, then you're back to zero. So are you thinking about what can I do every day, every week, every month, just to keep the marketing machine rolling?
Oh, this thing doesn't turn off, CJ. It's sometimes, like I said to Stephanie today, I'm like, I just, always, right now I'm in the middle of 8 or 9 deals, which is a lot for me being just a solo agent. I delegated my first thing, which was just some just closed and just listed posts for my socials, just to take one thing off my shoulders. I'm a little bit of a control freak, so that was a big step for me. But I need to, because I do need to be more present with the clients in front of me. But I have systems, which my brain works very good with systems. Like, okay, like I said, I list a property and I have that little mail to the neighbors, and then I list the property, and then I send the brochures, and then I do the postcards. That's my listing kind of thing. And then I also do quarterly newsletters that I print out and actually send to my spheres, about 300 people. Some people, clients, prospective clients, everything of that nature. And it has the market update, it has recipes. So that's something to stay in front of them hard paper wise every quarter. So it'll be, a winter one, a spring one, summer one, fall one. And also too, I do home anniversary gifts. So every year I switch that up. So that way I'm at least staying in front of my past clients once a year. And well, technically 5 times a year, because they get my newsletter 4 times a year. So my goal is to just always stay in front of them, and also being just genuine. Like all my home anniversary cards, it is a pain in the butt writing out a nice, message in a Sharpie, and I have like a keychain. Just like do something different every year with them. Last year I just did like Starbucks gift cards, just a $5 coffee.
Yeah.
And so I think those systems help me tremendously, because I finally gotten them down to where I like don't have to wake up anymore and be like, okay, how am I going to work on my business and not in my business today? That kind of thing. Whereas my newsletters, my home anniversary cards, my postcards, just listed, just sold, all of those things are working on my business. And it kind of, I do those things and during the times that I'm not working in my business. And sometimes that's a half day of designing my postcard and making sure that it's to my standards. And then the other half is talking to clients and going on showings and doing all of that. But yeah, I would have never guessed what it would be like running your own business like this back when I started. It just keeps on just going and going.
Well, let's talk about, because you've been in this 5 years. Let's talk about what you dislike in being a realtor. So, what's hard for you, or what do you wish were different?
Honestly, and I think that brings up the buyer broker with NAR. I think that the risk of potential time wasting is a big thing, but that is with any commission sales job, right? I think that's something that I, dislike about the job. And also too, like I mentioned, just some agents out there, and there's not a lot. It's not like I'm so blessed that majority of my deals, I do know the agent on the other side, and it's great. But you do get those ones where it might be like, Uncle Joe just has his license just for whatever reason, and he's selling Aunt Sally's property, and real estate is so you need to have the right people in place, and you need to have the right team in place in order to like successfully and timely and efficiently get to the finish line of closing. And when there's somebody on the other end who you can tell like doesn't care, nothing, and there's nothing you can do about it because they're getting paid whether or not I'm going to make the whole thing, it all falls on me. They're going to still there's always one agent that's going to catch like a brunt of a lot of it usually when that happens. So I guess the lack of discipline, or I guess the lack of standards that they hold for realtors, I guess would be a good way to put it. The time wasting and just the potential, because that could be something that's no one's fault. It could be something that you spend a year showing someone houses and they just simply decide not to move. What are you going to do? Be like, come after them for not wanting to move? You just hope. All you can do in those situations, and this is what I tell myself to stay positive, all you can hope is that they refer you. So if you give them the experience, even though they didn't close with you, if you were at least professional and on time and you were educated on everything, they're going to still remember you. So that's just that silver lining I try to take with me after, you get punched a couple times. But yeah, I would say that. Other than that, I really do love my job. Sometimes it is a lot though, dealing with, like I said, I'm in the middle of like 9 deals right now. So everyone has a story. Everyone has a different place that they're going, right? Everyone is like, okay, I gotta be in here and then this. And it's a lot to juggle. I wish I could just sometimes replicate myself, but I can't. But yeah, I would say just the craziness of it all. I wish that there was a little bit more consistency in real estate, but that's what makes it exciting, is that it's just wild right now, and who knows where it'll be in the fall and winter, right?
Yeah, and I'd love to get your thoughts on the NAR settlement, which again we'll talk just specifically about buyer representation. Now, of course, buyer commissions are not guaranteed to be paid by the seller, the list agent. Of course, buyer representation is now, it's really critical to have those conversations around, here's what I charge, here's how we're going to try to get it paid one way, and then we may have to go a second way if that doesn't work. And I'd love to get your thoughts on how those conversations, which, for being totally frank, and I'm not speaking for Kelly or about Kelly, but let's be honest, the vast majority of realtors used to not have those conversations with buyers because technically the buyers weren't cutting a check. So it was just easier not to talk about it, or to talk about it just kind of briefly. And this is probably why the issues we're having today, but it's also the way the system was set up. So it was good for certain reasons, and then maybe it wasn't great in other reasons for other ways. But we're now in a situation where we do have to have those conversations, with the buyer every single time, and have them agree to some sort of compensation plan before you even go see a home. So tell us how that's going for you and what the response has been from your clients.
I think it's of course going to be an adjustment. I think there's going to be some avenues taken that maybe turn around, go, like there's going to be some kinks that need to be worked out, but I think ultimately it's great for the industry. So when I have these conversations, it's all about transparency, right? If you really think about it, we're the only like profession that will just jump up and go and drive however far and potentially waste a bunch of time without one bit of agreement or tie to that client. And that's insane, because really what other job does that,
Yeah, attorneys don't just start working for free going, I hope you're going to pay me someday.
Yeah, and then also it being like a taboo topic of like, okay, why is it not talked about? That never sat well with me, because it was, and I never liked the phrase of the seller pays the commission,
because it's not really true. Number
it
one,
depends on how you look at it.
it depends on how you look at it.
Yeah,
right?
The settlement statement says it, but like, as far as I'm concerned, the buyer's the only person who brought money to the table. And as far as I'm concerned, the buyer's actually paying interest on that. So if you want to get technical, I think the buyer might be taking a bigger hit than the seller. But again, someone can argue that they're blue in the face
Sure.
and vice versa. But I think transparency is just the biggest thing. And just the simple statement that nobody can really rebuttal, in my opinion, is nobody works for free. And this is something, and I've had these conversations, shout out to my managing broker. She has been pushing us to talk to have these really hard conversations before all of this, NAR stuff came about that, so we felt fully prepared. And so when we sit down, and I always do a buyer's meeting, and it's one of the first things I talk about. And that's actually one of the first things, even when I go on a listing appointment. And again, my managing broker taught me this. Bring up the uncomfortable part first. I do think that it shows that you're confident, and it shows that you're not trying to hide anything. And so I just bring it up first, and like, a lot of agents probably won't have this conversation with you, but I don't have time to waste. I want to help you. And this is going to help all of us because there's so much transparency here. And what this states, like, I work for X amount, and 9 times out of 10, if you the seller and the seller's agent, if it's a normal agent, things are going to keep going the way they do, hopefully, they're going to be offering a compensation, whether that's 2%, 2.5%, or if it's zero, however it shakes out, whatever ways we got to get creative. I don't work for less than X. And they appreciate the way that I put it out there. And I'm like, these are the different scenarios that can happen. You might have an agent offering this, and that might not even be needed. Or if it's a 0.5%, and it's going to be, I think, just being honest with them and saying, hey, we're working through these changes too. This is new to the real estate world. This is new to everybody. And this is what we know so far. And I think if you are wanting to purchase the biggest, asset of your life, I think that I don't think it should be a big, long, hard thought on if you want to hire someone to guide you through it. I really don't. But if it is, maybe then we don't have to work together. It's not, I don't want to ever work with anyone who doesn't want to work with me, and I'll never tie anybody, and I'll never force anyone's hand in signing anything. The most I can do is just be honest and tell you what I deliver and tell you everything put on the table. You make the decision for yourself. But I think people really appreciate the confidence and the honesty when you just explain it the way it is.
Agreed. So you have a podcast, the Realtor Talk with Steph and Cal, which is available everywhere podcasts are served. Tell us about that.
It's a work in progress. So Stephanie, my mentor, her and I, we always did like short Instagram reels, and it would always be random stuff like, oh, hey, this is as is, or oh, hey, market update. And I'm a huge podcast listener. I love podcasts. How I knew about you, like everything. I love podcasts. I'm like, we should start a podcast. And this was like last fall. And just, naive us thinking it would just be this like, okay, let's just record and throw it on. I don't know if we're missing something. And that's why I asked you before we started what you use, just because I'm like, why is starting a podcast the hardest endeavor of my life thus far? So we're working out the kinks, but we're enjoying it. We're honestly just having fun with it. I think it's really good for both clients and realtors to listen to. It's a very relaxed podcast. We don't really, it's not very buttoned up. We don't care if there's some ums and likes and laughs, and we talk over each other a little bit, but you learn a little bit about real estate and just kind of hanging out with us in a way. And I think that there's at least a few good nuggets, whether you're an agent or a client, that you can take from each episode. But we're still in the beginning works. So just note that we're working on it.
Yeah, it is. The podcasts are tough. I know for the first year of my show, I didn't even look at the numbers because they would have just depressed me. And even today, I try not to obsess about the numbers, because even though our show is a lot more popular than it used to be, it's still never going to be a number that I like. So if you're, it's like stepping on a scale. Like, what are the odds the number that shows back to me is actually a number I want to see?
So true.
Yeah, it's probably a 0%.
Do you listen back on your
No,
episodes?
never.
Me neither.
No, but I will say I do take feedback, and so ultimately the audience is who you need to serve, and of course any podcaster should be considering their audience. And so for me, I go by the temperature of the audience. I also check our numbers to see if we're losing subscribers or gaining them. But at the end of the day, it's all about the quality of the content, and so. We just, on our show, we just try to continue to deliver, really helpful information to agents. I hope that it's helpful. It seems to be for a lot of listeners.
It is.
Yeah. but it is also it's a lot of work. I think there's, and the other thing too about why a podcast is so difficult to start is there's like a billion podcasts out there. So
Right.
it's
Right.
hard to get anyone to notice because there's so many, anybody can start a podcast, right?
I
So
know.
it's,
Yeah.
and a
Quick
lot of people
moving.
do. Yeah. 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 So it's tricky, but I think it's super helpful because even if your clients know that you're starting a show, and it's, again, it's kind of both for agents, your show, and for clients, or for the public, I think it really just makes it's a way that people can get to know you better, right?
I
So they're
agree.
listening to your voice, they feel maybe a little bit more connected to you because they're listening to you have conversations. There's something about, listening to people, and you feel like I have like this weird, even though it's not really a relationship with someone, I feel like I know that person a little bit, or I know
I
about
actually have a
them.
story about that, which is
Please.
hilarious. So I had, which is never happens. It was a random, no, not a referral, nothing. It was a random lead. Just called the office for me. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I went to this condo and she listens to my podcast. And she literally, I'm not kidding you, I felt like I knew her after because of just how comfortable she was. We didn't even have a listing agreement signed yet because I just, I leave it with them and I send it to them electronically. Handed me the keys before I even left. So nothing was signed because it was going to be vacant. And she had the place, oh my gosh, it was meticulous. Counters were clean, everything. She's like, yeah, I listened to your podcast because we put in there on how to stage your house, how to do these things. This woman made the easiest listing presentation in my life because she already felt like she knew me. And it was like all of the things that I would say, I have said at some point in the podcast. She was realistic about price. She was like, yeah, I don't want to be sitting on like all of these things that we try to get across to our clients in the podcast. So I called Stephanie right after I left and I'm like, the podcast finally paid off because literally this client was a dream and she referenced our podcast so many times. And I'm like, that is honestly, if that's the most that comes out of this podcast, that is great because it made my life so much easier by meeting a complete stranger who I thought she was a complete stranger to me, but she already knew me and she liked me and she trusted me. And it really made such a difference. And I'm like, okay, that was like, all right, you should keep doing this, Kelly and Stephanie.
Yeah, and I have a suggestion for our listeners. If, look, not everyone needs to have a podcast. There's certainly enough of them out there, but real estate is hyper local, and I know, like, I live in the city. I live in Wicker Park. I want to know what's going on in Wicker Park. I am sure there's a Wicker Park podcast. I should look to see if there is one because I'd like to know about the goings on, or if it's a suburb or a neighborhood or whatever area the agent may specialize in as their kind of true north. Like this is kind of the area I know better than anything. I think anybody can create a little local podcast for their
Oh,
community
yeah.
and feature local businesses, really get the word out in the local community, be like, hey, I just want to support local businesses here. And who would say no to wanting some free publicity for their clothing store or their restaurant, and
Right.
yeah. So, and I think it also demonstrates too that you care about the community. And so, you just gave a great example. So somebody came to you because they listened to your show and you didn't need to sell yourself quite as much as you would for somebody
Right.
who hasn't heard you, because they've already listened to probably a few hours of you speaking, and you're giving them that obviously valuable information that they were willing to contact you after the podcast and say, hey, let's work together. So you're right. I think there's a way to create podcasts for your public that is really super useful to them, and in which case it will just save you time going forward about, of
Yes.
course, we know referrals can come in lots of different ways. That to me was a referral that you received. It wasn't
Right.
technically from another client, but it was from yourself, because your content out there was obvious. Now, how did she find your content? That's a good question.
I don't know. I actually should probably ask her that. Well, I know her daughter. She said her daughter always used app properties, so you could tell they were wanting someone with app properties. So she just knew she wanted to use app properties, and then when it came to looking for the agent, maybe somehow stumbled upon my podcast. Yeah, it was great. And then another time I used the podcast was we were in a multiple offer situation, and even though I go over all of the multiple offer scenarios at my initial buyers meeting, when it comes down to the nitty gritty, sometimes they have short-term memory loss. And so me and Stephanie did an entire episode of the multiple offer toolbox of all the things you can do in a multiple offer situation and really going in depth about them. And I sent the episode to my clients. I was like, honestly, just listen to this. And they're like, oh, that was such a good refresher. Thank you. Like just stuff like that.
Love it. Really, really great advice. What agents, if you want to think about a podcast, it doesn't have to be interviewing somebody. It doesn't have to be being super entertaining. It just has to be useful. So if you think about, what do my clients routinely ask me time and time and time again, that those are episodes right there. That's an episode. Say, hey,
Hmm.
here's one of my frequently asked questions that most of my home buyers end up asking, or homes, or sellers, etc. Here's how to think about what neighborhoods might be the best fit, or anyway, really just giving people insight in how a realtor thinks, I think, is really important,
Oh yeah,
because you obviously have wisdom, experience, knowledge that the person that you're representing does not have. And so if you can sort of give that away for free, at least some of it, on and a lot of people might think, well, I don't want to give away my secret sauce. And I'm like, well, your secret sauce is really you, and it's all
yeah,
the things you do. It's not really your knowledge. Your knowledge is a part of it, but you can give your knowledge away for free. And what will happen is, people look, we live in a world where we expect content to be free. So
right,
right. Yeah. I mean, whether it's social media or YouTube or wherever, we don't yes, you can pay for content. Most people don't. So this idea is, I mean, this podcast is free, of course. So,
right.
if I started charging, I think I'd lose
You
most of my
probably
audience.
could. No, I feel like you could charge to
Maybe,
have people, like, because you have a platform, like, hey, if you want to,
yeah, I could,
but
I could
after me,
charge, I could
not
charge
this one.
like, yeah, not this one. No, but I could, well, yeah, I guess I could charge guests, but I don't feel right about that. But asking my audience to chip in is certainly, certainly reasonable. But we just thankfully don't have to do that. Maybe someday we'll do that. But for now, again, putting out this, and realtors never have to charge for content because they're using it as a way to market themselves. So it's a really great idea. Consider, even if it's just, you know best restaurants in Wicker Park, and that's your podcast, and all you do is feature one restaurant a week, and you go over and you talk to the owner and you record it. I am telling you, people are going to, if you can tell people about it, they are going to want to know things like that. Or,
Right.
we're going to check out all the parks, or whatever you're into.
Or I
That
just try, like, if you learn something new that day. Like, for instance, I just posted, I was in my car and I just did I was with my inspector, same inspector I always use. And he said something that put it that I knew that, but he put it in such simple terms. He's like, there's six major components to the house. There's your roof, windows, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and windows. And so he's like, those are the six major functions. So if you have at least four out of those six that are in good working order, usually that's a good, a good sign, kind of thing. And I literally hopped on Instagram and I was like, he just put it in such simple terms. So if you're a homeowner, what are the six main components you want to always pay attention to and make sure that they are maintained and up to date? And if you're a buyer, these are the six main things that you should probably make sure are, somewhat in control when you're buying a house. Like, and again, I know those things, but I'm like, that's just such a great way to put it. And so I just put it out there as a piece of advice. Like, content can be anything. I'm amazed at some of the things that people watch. So that almost keeps my those anxiety levels of, like, oh, is this stupid to post, or oh, is this, like, we all get that, we all experience it. It's something, I think, that's human nature. But if you just remember the ridiculousness that's out there and the amount of, like, just the worst content ever that's consumed, like, you're just another, drop in the bucket. And to me, that is actually it makes me feel a little bit better. Like, I'm just throwing that out there because there's, it could be a lot of anxiety with that.
Yeah, I think, having anxiety around any new skill that you're learning is totally normal. And we need, as realtors, or as any business professional, or any human, really, we need to learn to be okay with being uncomfortable, especially when
Yes.
we're learning a new skill, because the only way we really learn is through failure. And failure is, of course, not a lot of fun for most of us, but it is the pathway to actually learning things, and applying them. So this idea of having anxiety is like, you got to get a little, not you, Kelly, but anyone who's wanting to, learn a new skill, whether it's having a buyer conversation about price, or starting a podcast, or, deciding to work with investors, which, you're an investor yourself. That's a whole decision, because a lot of agents are like, I don't really understand investment properties. Well, okay, maybe today you don't. And if you want to build that into your practice, you're going to want to learn those skills, and it's going to be really uncomfortable, and it's going to be a little scary. And And that's how you
Yeah.
know, it's actually how you know you're on the right track. If it's a little scary, you're on the right track.
I agree, and that's something too that, like, as a new agent, and even to this day, like, I never wanna stop learning. Like, you should wanna continue learning, because there's even things like there's certain things about real estate that I'll learn a new usually something new with every deal, and it's great,
Mhm.
and that's all you can ask for, and that's, again, brings me back to mentorship, because you know how I always say Stephanie did my first 3 deals, it was just my voice. Because, "Hey, what is this?" Or, "Hey, what do I do next?" Or, "Hey, what," like, I mean, she literally, and there's no better way to learn, at least for my brain, is to be literally just coached through the process, which is what I try to replicate to my clients.
And you can coach people through the process via a podcast as well.
Yeah,
So yeah. So there's really great stuff. Speaking of your podcast, it is Realtor Talk with Steph and Kel. We'll have a link to that in our show notes. Also, the website to work with Stephanie and her group is goldgroup@properties.com. We'll have a link to that. You can find Stephanie. You can find Kelly. Well, Stephanie's
you're
there too.
okay.
You can
Yeah,
find Kelly. You can find Kelly. I'm looking at a picture of Stephanie when I'm saying that, so I was her name came to mind. But we, of course, are talking to Kelly. But yeah, you can find Kelly's information on there. And please subscribe to her podcast. Please check her out. And if you're an agent in another part of the country who maybe has clients that move to Chicago, or maybe you're in one of the markets where people move from Chicago to, for example, Florida is one of those places,
yeah,
Texas, Arizona. There's lots of, South Carolina, maybe. There's lots of places that are, we know that people retire to, or maybe, think about having a winter home in. And if you are in those markets, or you have people moving in and out of Chicago, you should you should connect with Kelly to see if you would be a good match to pass some leads back and forth. So
I
Kelly,
love
what's the
that.
best way one of our listeners could get in touch with you?
I would say Instagram is a great one, and then also my cell phone number. My cell phone number is all over my socials, so feel free. Really, anyway, I check all my DMs. I don't have anyone doing that for me, so anyway, call
And
me, email
what's
me.
your Instagram?
It's Kelly Dugan _ real estate.
Kelly Dugan _ real estate on Instagram. We'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. Kelly, thank you so much. And by the way, we should mention too, the reason Kelly came on to our radar is, I think did you reach out to us, or am I wrong about that? Or did we reach
I
out to
reached
you?
out about my realtor with my podcast with
That's right.
Stephanie.
So I knew there was something that you had done proactively, and I just had forgotten because it's been months since that happened. And this is a really important thing. Kelly reached out, and now I'm sort of remembering it. And you were like, maybe you asked a question, or you asked for some advice or help, or whatever. And I think we got on the phone pretty quickly, or it was via email or whatever it was. Do you know how many times I get asked for help on a podcast? Like, almost never, maybe once a year. So
Wow.
this is also a great, the reason I'm bringing this up, I think it's a great opportunity for all of our listeners to think about who in your local market do you really admire, whether they work at your firm or at a different firm. It's probably better if it's even at a different firm. You can reach out to those people and say,
Yes,
hey,
I'm
I
never proud to
really
ask for help.
I
Never too
yeah,
proud.
I really respect, you and what your business is, and I would love to buy you a cup of coffee and just pick your brain for 10 minutes if you have time, or just, ask you some questions. It's the most flattering thing. And I think we often think that these top producers are untouchable, and a lot of them, some of them are. I mean, some of them are just too busy, or they're just, they don't have the time, or want to, the need to meet with you. But a lot of them will. And you'd be surprised at how few people reach out to them for advice and guidance, because we get a little intimidated by that. But Kelly was not intimidated. I mean, she shouldn't be
Gosh, I
intimidated by
would
me.
be like, I love sharing. I think there's enough business for everybody. I think that the cutthroatness of this industry, and like agents and everything, like we have to all help each other, because we're all going to be on the other side, and we're all striving for the same goal. There's enough business for everybody. And I think ego will be like the first thing to honestly make your business go down, in my opinion. This is a people business. You have to, whether that person's an agent, whether that person, anything, your reputation is going to follow you.
Perfectly said, and great place to wrap up. So the podcast is Realtor Talk with Steph and Kel. Link on our show notes. Reach out to Kelly. You can find her, Kelly Dugan _ real estate. That's on Instagram. We'll have a link to that as well. Reach out to her. Ask her for her best tips and advice. She would appreciate it. And also, if you want to connect with her, maybe you need a realtor in the local area, or maybe you're a realtor and you maybe are passing leads to other people, and you want to see if there's a great connection with Kelly. So Kelly Dugan, thank you for being part of our show. On behalf of our audience, thank you. We appreciate you. We honor you. Also a fellow podcaster. We love that. And on behalf of Kelly and myself, we want to thank the audience for sticking around to the very
Yes.
end. We love you as well and appreciate you. Please support our sponsors. Please check out Kelly's podcast, like and
Yeah,
subscribe
DJ
there.
Paris, thank you so much. This has been lovely. I've loved getting to know you a little bit. And if you need help on the sourdough, give me a call.
I definitely need help on the sourdough, so maybe we'll start a new podcast about
Let's
sourdough
do
for
it.
dummies, because I think I fall into the dummies category. But I will definitely be reaching out to you for some tips there. Everyone else should be reaching out to Kelly if you have clients moving in and out of Chicago, or if you just need an agent yourself and you're moving here. So Kelly Dugan is your person. Links to all of her information in our show notes. Kelly, thank you again.
Thank
And we will
you.
see everybody on the next episode.